Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Michelle Saeed, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're thrilled to have Taylor Johnson, the founder and performance coach of Taylor Johnson Performance LLC, joining us. Since launching, Taylor has been helping CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs unlock their full potential with a holistic approach to performance coaching, blending science-backed systems from sports with leadership optimization. We'll explore their founding story, how Taylor Johnson Performance is redefining success for high performers, and their vision for scaling this coaching-driven business. So with that being said, let's dive in. Taylor, welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to kick things off. For our listeners, take us back to the beginning, Taylor. What specific problem within the performance or leadership landscape, perhaps around like burnout or unlocking potential, inspired you to start Taylor Johnson Performing?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, my background's in athletic performance, coached in college and the NFL. Went from the NFL into gaming and esports, from the esports industry into startups, and then from startup to do executive performance coaching, and really landing me to what I'm doing now. And I think the through line in all of that, I've said my passion is performance, and it's my curiosity that navigates me through the world. And one of the things that I kept coming across is realizing that we are all performers. Like we all step into this arena each and every day. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, lawyer, soccer mom, stay-at-home dad. We have this arena, and at the fundamental level, at our core, we want to do well. And so part of that, of what I've seen, and one of the problems I saw is people didn't quite understand the structure of how to make it their own game. They were playing to somebody else's rules. And so that's really how I like to frame up my coaching is I deserve every business athlete deserves to play their own game. And so then the question becomes then how do you start to unpack that and make that actionable for an individual to really up level their performance?
Love that. Now, your background is deeply rooted in high performance environments. How did that shape your decision to launch a coaching business for business leaders?
Yeah, it just made sense, right? For me, it was again coming back to I just love being around high performers. Typically, the people that I work with are the type A personalities, they're hard chargers, and really they want to play a bigger game. So oftentimes they are leveling up in some aspect of their career, whether they start a new role in a new organization or they're starting their own company, or they have their eyes set on a really big milestone they want to accomplish. And so it's reverse engineering that. And so for me, making that transition and building out a performance coaching practice around that just made a ton of sense because a lot of the performance principles are the same.
Right.
Right? Think about what it takes to operate at a high level. You can map that across to any industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into the nuts and bolts for our listeners and even like some potential clients that are tuning in. Walk us through how Taylor Johnson Performance generates revenue today. What's your core offer? Is it one-on-one coaching, performance systems? How do you structure what you do for your clients, such as executives or even like larger organizations?
I would say primarily individuals I'm working with right now are account executives or high performance sellers, right? So they're account executives in SaaS or they're in the insurance world, risk management. And so typically I work with individuals one-on-one, individuals that are part of an organization. I do work with teams. What ends up happening is because I work with individuals, they end up getting success. Then people on their team are like, hey, what are you doing? I want more of that. And then I end up working with small groups and teams. So the core offer really is one-on-one coaching. I typically don't take on more than 10 full-time clients at a time because I go really deep. And the reason for that is we're really looking at all the fundamental structures around how you operate, how you're going to get the clarity, how we're going to build the competency and the skill set, and then really leverage and expand your capacity to get the goals that you want. Really, it looks like the one-on-one coaching. I typically work with individuals for 6 to 12 months, and we build out these training blocks. And so that's for those who are familiar with the world of performance or athletics, it's 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So load, week off, and reload. And each training block has a specific emphasis, an intention behind it to drive that performance forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And really the fact that it sounds like you're also probably getting traction from referrals, anyone who's gone through what you're offering, and that's maybe creating that snowball effect. On that note, building on this growth, What are you currently doing to acquire clients? Which channels, whether it's like LinkedIn, your network from sports, referrals, like I just mentioned, like what's been like the most effective for landing clients for services?
Yeah, great question. I constantly am doing the 80-20 analysis and say, okay, where is the 80% coming from my 20% effort? And for me, what I realized last year, it's really doing things like this. So public speaking, podcasts, but really in-person workshops was a huge amplifier for me. I think partly because we know this, COVID really changed things, but when you're in person, there's a different energy that comes across. And so even being on video, you can capture a little bit of that, but being in person is really where it amplifies. So referrals are a big part of my business. I'd say it's probably about 75%, which is fantastic. And as we all know, referrals are maybe not that consistent. So it's about systematizing the referral system, doing a great job of reaching back out to former clients, people in my network, and really not asking, but just offering support, saying, hey, who can I help you with? Who can I connect you with, and creating that ripple effect of the network? The other thing is, again, coming back to the workshop stuff, I just love teaching and coaching. And
Mhm.
so amplifying that for myself is just, it's an absolute joy. And what tends to happen is I get clients out of that because they just think they feel that energy. Plus, my goal is to offer a ton of value. So they're like, wow, if I got this much out of a workshop, I can't imagine what it's like to work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Really just giving a little bit of insight into your world and like what you can actually do for them rather than just talking more generally about what it is. And that's really where you can build that connection. Now, I'd love to learn more about now your approach to sales, like what strategies have been like the most effective in kind of converting anyone who comes through the process, whether it's like referrals or you do a workshop, they come up to you and they want to find out more like their actual leads. How do you convert them into long-term clients? Are you doing this on your own, or do you have a team right now that's helping on that side of the fulfillment?
Yeah, so the sale, again, I work with a lot of sellers, so it's very interesting selling to sellers. So I typically do a two-call close. First call really is just, it's honestly a vibe check. At least that's what it's turned into. A lot of my sales training initially came from Jeremy Miner in seventh level, which I absolutely love his whole framework.
Yeah.
I mean, it just sounds, looks like you're familiar with it. He's fantastic. Like his coaches that are part of his staff are killers. Like they're so good, so thoughtful. My fiance is going through their inner circle right now, and she's crushed. She's actually, you should probably interview her too. She's an
Right.
absolute savage in her business. But so taking that initial framework for Jeremy Miner and just really understanding the structure of it, because I never had that. I'm a performance coach, right? So I was just having conversations. So having a more structured, intentional conversation was a huge level up for me. And then really thinking about what might be the questions that I could ask in the perspective and identity shifts that I could start to create within that conversation and show them what's possible. So
Mm,
a big part of that was really understanding very deeply the individuals that I'm working with and the problem sets. What I've recently shifted into, which has been an absolute game changer and built on top of Jeremy Miner's stuff, is working with Simon Bowen.
mm,
And so he's out of Australia. He's got the genius model method, and it's using visuals. It's using drawing and creating visual models to help bridge the understanding from what it is we're talking about to what it is you can actually look at tangibly and make sense of. And
mm,
that's completely shifted a lot of my coaching, to be honest,
mm.
because now I leverage visuals in all of my coaching. So I use it in the sales process as well to give them a taste of, hey, this is what we do. Like we will
Right.
workshop live and work through a specific problem set, not just verbally, but actually contextually through visuals. And it just lands way better for clients.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was like, oh, ding dang, Jeremy Minor, NEPQ, just really great material. I've gone through the program myself and it's one of the best ones out there. So I love the fact that you're leveraging a lot of that and then really just being open and building upon what you learned there. Are you in the inner circle, by the way? Because I know you mentioned your fiance was.
No, I am not. Actually, I do one-on-one coaching with one of their other top sales coaches there, but I'm not doing inner circle. I decided to go into Simon Bowen's because if you haven't checked him out, I'd highly encourage him. Just the way he thinks,
Mm,
it sold me on Simon because his whole process is around the marketing, selling, and delivery. But what sold me on Simon is I went down the rabbit hole, as I'm sure you do too. It's like finding what is it about this person that really sets him apart, and he was on a podcast with Joe Polish, and Joe was like, I have interviewed thousands of people, and I've never met anyone that thinks like you.
mm,
And like that to me was like, I want to learn from that guy
yeah.
because I strive for myself. It's how do you bring together the best knowledge across all different industries? And that's really what I do in my coaching. but bring across all this different knowledge and make it a very unique experience and delivery for that individual and create those shifts for them.
Love that. Now, from what it sounds like, this growth has been incredible. You've pretty much figured out already how do I get in front of the right clients, but also what is that process that I'm going to take them through so that they're able to make that transformation. For some of our listeners who are tuning in and they're maybe a little bit stuck, from your own experience, like if there was one bottleneck that stood out, what would it be? Is it more or less like attracting like the right types of people to work with, maybe improving your conversions, scaling the operation? What are you like most focused on right now to keep this momentum going?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for me to understand, would it be for speaking to like other coaches like myself or just sellers in general?
Yeah, I would definitely say just on all fronts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say first get really clear on what your offer is. What is it the value you're actually delivering? When I first got into coaching and like outside of working for another organization and saying, hey, I'm going to plant this flag and do it for myself. I made a lot of mistakes in building a business, as I think people do. It's part of entrepreneurship is a fast track to self-actualization, right? It's every day you get to wake up and say, do I have what it takes? And so I hired a coach who I thought would be a great mentor in that space. And it ended up being a very expensive lesson in what not to do. And it was just like, hey, just go out there and just start pitching. Well, pitch what? So I think one of the lessons I learned was get really clear on what that offer is for yourself and the value that you bring, because you'll have more conviction when you're on that call and you're trying to communicate and articulate that value. Because
Mhm.
it becomes more of it's not a sales conversation. For me, it's always been a coaching conversation. Hey, I want to help you. Let's understand how I might be able to help you if I understand your problem set and help bring you through where that end state might be. So I think that'd be the first thing, is just really get a clear sense of what it is that you're offering. And then two, get the reps. You got to practice and get the reps. It
Mhm.
is a skill. Sales is a skill, just like anything else. And the more that you practice, and I think the more exposure you have in different arenas, if we really take a step back and look at it, everything is a negotiation in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. And it's not that sales is a negotiation, but it's really just all comes down to communication. If you chunk up on that and think about, okay, what's the common denominator, a skill that you can learn that's going to amplify your sales process? It's learning how to communicate. And then more importantly, it's learning how to listen and then
Mhm.
asking the right questions. One of my favorite books I would very encourage all the listeners to go check out is by Warren Berger, A More Beautiful Question.
Mhm.
And he's got a couple of different books, but it's just like how to think differently about asking questions. And that just, I think that was one of the big differentiators for me of, okay, I'm going to approach this completely differently, just get really curious. And that's helped me a lot.
No, absolutely. And that's really where it starts is like, how can you actually start to think more about the answers you're going to get? You have to reverse engineer it. What is the response you're looking for? And how do I start to prompt that in my mind to like really ask like the right thing to get the right information? That's valuable information and really nice read that you pointed out there. With everything you've accomplished so far, the success you've seen, would love to hear more about the vision for the near future. I know you talked a little bit about this is really just keep doing what you're doing, but as you look ahead, what's like top of mind for growing Taylor Johnson performance over like the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, well, okay, good. 6 to 12 months. I'm gonna say I don't usually plan past 12 weeks. My short answer, kind of pithy answer to that is a quote from a book, A Lion Tracker's Guide to Life by Boyd Varty. Again, highly recommend that on audiobook. There's a quote in there where he's asking one of the tribesmen about how does he know where to go, and the tribesman responds, he says, I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how to get there. And I just
Mhm.
love that quote because we don't know where we're essentially going to end up. All we know is like we just need to put in the work to get there.
Mhm.
So for me, the next 6 to 12 months, it's continue to do more of what I'm doing, but even better. In the way I approach my coaching at this stage and phase, every conversation I have is an opportunity to reset the standards and expectations of what it looks like to work with a coach. Like that is my primary goal right now, where
Mhm.
every interaction, people walk away and it's like, wow, I didn't know that was possible. That dude's on a different level. So
Mhm.
that's everything that I'm focused on is geared towards that. And that's from the first time they interact with me on social media to a first conversation, all the way through the client journey and experience. Because I used to work in game development where we focused heavily on UI and UX. Like, what is the user experience of how they go through the motions of what it is they're doing? And
Mhm.
so I think about that quite a bit. So that's really what I'm focused on for the next 6 to 12 months, because I know that'll set me up for whatever will come in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you had like a genie in the room, you like rub the lamp and now you have like unlimited resources to work with, what would you implement immediately to accelerate the growth of your organization? What would you tackle first?
Great question. I would have a team of creatives that I could tap and develop a more immersive experience for my clients. So I use a lot of visuals, like I said, but even in like my recap notes and what we're creating, I would create a more immersive experience because most of the clients that I work with are virtual. So I would find a way to make it an even more powerful experience for my end user
Mm,
based on the goal that they want to achieve.
okay. No, I love that. Really just how can I start to make this more real, tangible, human? Sensory is super important. So I love the fact that you mentioned that right off the bat. And I'm gonna assume that's part of like your acquisition strategy as well, maybe is like how can we start to create a better front end experience as well so that they get that impression from like the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah. Have it be consistent throughout.
Love that. One last question since we're in the lightning round for the listeners, entrepreneurs, founders who are looking to follow in your footsteps. What's the best piece of advice you've received about scaling a coaching business, perhaps from like your time in sports or like elsewhere?
Sometimes you need to slow down and speed up. And so I think giving yourself strategic pauses to really reflect and say, okay, what did I actually do to get me to where I am now? And what's working and what's no longer working? Because I think the name of the game is to operate at speed. One of my mentors shared with me, he's like, you want to operate at 51% confidence at speed. And that's how you win the game of scale. And you can only do that when you strategically plan those moments to say, okay, what has actually been working to get me the output that I want? Because there's a distinction between outcomes and output.
Mm,
People confuse those two things. Like performance is not an outcome, it's an output.
mm.
So focusing on what are the outputs and then how do you reverse engineer the inputs to drive that to hopefully get the outcome that you want. That is the name of the game. So being strategic about giving yourself that time and space, take a beat, assess, calibrate, and then hit it.
Yeah, no, very well said, and just very impactful and clinical as well. We were talking about that a little bit earlier as well with like the questions as well as okay, think about reverse engineering it and then working that in your mind before you initiate those conversations. That's really great stuff. On that note, that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I want to thank Taylor for sharing his remarkable journey and insights with us today, from coaching pros and building the organization into a transformative force for high performing leaders. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find some more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world class sales systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we'll see you all on the next one.